and my team was like total dust, like just because I didn't have Cooper Kupp. Mike Williams got 40 yesterday. Like, right. I think that on with how many wide receivers are just like going ballistic on a given week, I think that you are giving up too much playing.
We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by FanDuel. 3 key takeaways from week 3. Let's tie a bow on this whole thing together. But before we get there, I actually can see on the back end that about half of you guys watching this video are not subscribed to the channel. So hopefully by the end of this video, that changes. Smash that like button while you're at it. Does mean the world. Really helps more people find these videos. And we're not alone again today, thankfully. A weekly guest on the Joe Holka Show. You guys know him from Sportsgrid, the Taekcast, and of course, the Swolecast. Davis Mattek, how we doing, my man?
We're doing all right. We booked a win in week 3, so we are 2 for 3 in not getting our butts handed to us in DFS. So that feels pretty good. Wish the Chiefs would have pulled it out yesterday, but the parlay of your seasonal teams booking wins, right? So like on average, you get about 60% of your seasonal teams winning, your favorite team winning, and booking a win in DFS. I mean, that parlay is incredibly hard to hit. I don't know how many weekends in my life that parlay is actually hit.
Yeah, most of the time, at least 2 of those things are going horribly wrong, and you're like trying to grasp to anything that is going super right. So that's great, man. A couple wins and I guess booked this early in the season has to feel good. You can kind of just play normal the rest of the way. The pressure's off. It's those years where you have like 3 or 4 like kind of rough weeks to start the year that it's a lot harder to I guess prove to yourself that you're doing the right thing. So that's good, man. Really solid. I played a little bit less volume this past week. Obviously, it was fun to kind of sweat that lineup with the Tiltspace guys, so they ended up taking down second in the juke, so we built that lineup pretty close to lock, actually. But yeah, so that was fun. We ended up being in first most of the afternoon, and then basically I think a team came from behind pretty late with the Stafford stack. So Cooper Kupp, man, just absolutely ruining my dreams yet again. So that's going to be the first guy that we talk about today. I'm not sure if Cooper Kupp is just like the second coming of Calvin Johnson at this point, Davis, but he's leading the league in receiving yards and touchdowns. I got to get your takeaway here.
Yeah, so Cooper Kupp through 3 games, 10, 11, and 12 targets. He has 33 targets. He leads the NFL in receptions. He leads the NFL in receiving yards. He has 5 receiving touchdowns through 5 games. Now, this is, you know what this is? This is a real bell curve meme moment where like the guy on the bottom left is like, "Durr, Cooper Kupp, go Burr." And then the guy in the middle with the glasses is like, "Cooper Kupp can't possibly sustain this. There's no way. Robert Woods is coming. Higbee will score more touchdowns." And then the Jedi on the right is like, "Cooper Kupp, go Burr." Because I actually think the touchdown production will not be sustainable. Maybe he ends with 10, maybe he ends with 12, whatever. But the rest of it to me looks completely sustainable because the Rams just had their toughest test, right? They just played the Buccaneers, who are the favorite in the NFC. They theoretically have one of the best defenses they're going to face, though the Buccaneers secondary has looked a little bit suspect through 3 games. And what has become clear to me is that Sean McVay was always handcuffed a little bit by what Jared Goff could do, that he would that they would be throwing the ball in the intermediate spaces, throwing lots of screens to the running backs, doing lots of run pass options where Jared Goff, theoretically had the option to check out of the runs, but Jared Goff would not do the checking. Jared Goff would like barely see what the defense was doing and just be like, "All right, I'm handing it off to Todd Gurley or whoever." And Goff is not doing that. Goff is just blitzing the ball down the field, just being super aggressive. And if Cooper Kupp leads the NFL in receptions and receiving yards, I don't think at this point that should be considered like a surprise, which seems insane considering how many good NFL wide receivers there are. But how can you argue with what he's done?
Man, Harmon said basically the same thing last week. We've talked about Cooper Kupp, I feel like, every week this year because he's been pretty popular even in DFS because he's been mispriced essentially to start the year. Now that it's like catching up to his role a little bit, man, it does feel like, of course, the touchdowns, that's gonna come and go, but the role seems like super safe. Stafford's found his guy. This is a team that's gonna throw a lot. Obviously, we know about the injuries they have in the run game, all that stuff, but I think the point you made about McVay is the one that makes this feel the most sticky to me, right? He's finally got this quarterback that can actually do things on his own and make decisions and make those throws, honestly. So he missed a couple other deep ones in this game as well. So, man, the Stafford's the real deal. He's someone that I haven't really played historically a ton in DFS, but and actually I kind of thought that this year it might be a little bit more of a hindrance just because his defense is so much better than Detroit's ever been when he was there. So he's proven me wrong in a million different ways. Cooper Kupp, I haven't looked at his price yet. We're going to do our first look here shortly, but I would imagine it's probably up there. Finally, they're going to basically test us on the other side of it now. Last week they tested us if we were going to play Saquon Barkley at 6K. This week I would imagine Cooper Kupp's going to be priced pretty high. Any other final thoughts on Cooper Kupp?
Yeah, I mean, just that, like, I do know what his price is, and I won't spoil it for you for the first look, but it's an absurd price, and I have a feeling that when I go through and I do, Tuesday is my day where our projections turn over and I go through and rework everything. I have a feeling he is going to still be popping at this price tag, which is, it is legitimately insane, but I think that it's going to happen.
All right, let's move on. We mentioned Saquon Barkley before. That price tag last week was definitely something that stood out. He was the running back 9 in week 3, 16 rush attempts, 7 targets. It feels like we're getting back to that normal workload that we love to see out of Saquon. But Davis, is Saquon again? Like, I mean, the people need to know, like, can we start to treat him the way we used to, or is he still going to be kind of eased back? It doesn't feel like it at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we have now back-to-back weeks of a snap share over 80%. It does look like one of the key differences between the Saquon that we remember and the version of Saquon that there is now is Daniel Jones is not going to check down to him as often. You know, if Eli Manning was the quarterback of that game against the Falcons yesterday and Darius Slayton gets banged up in game and stuff, like it feels like Saquon would have had like 9 targets or something. Remember Saquon had like a 13 reception game or something in like the 4th game of his career, and we were all like, holy shit, like this dude's gonna catch this guy Alvin Kamara, whatever. So I think he'll probably be more like a 10-11% target share guy than like a 15-11%. But a couple things were clear to me. I mean, Devontae Booker was a game day inactive yesterday, and I guess I don't know if he was injured or if that was just like, we don't need you and we want Gary Brightwell and Elijah Penny to be blocking. Like, I'd have to look a little bit more into that. But I think our weekly expectation for Barkley is going to be like 16 carries and 4 receptions. And when they're on the 3-yard line, they're good. They're 100% handing that dude the ball because they do not trust Daniel Jones to throw down there at all. So I do think that, and I know Barkley's price tag for this next week, and they have a difficult matchup against the Saints, and Daniel Jones is going to get eaten alive by that team. But I think he's going to be another interesting decision point this week.
Yeah, I looked at the pricing. Cooper Kupp is the most expensive wide receiver on FanDuel. He's $8,600. He is $400 more expensive than Tyreek Hill. He is $500 more expensive than Devontae Adams. So again, they're just testing us to see if we will pay that price tag for Cooper Kupp. So interesting, like you mentioned, Saquon on the other side of that, they actually haven't really done too much to his price yet, maybe because of the matchup. It's $6,900 on FanDuel for Saquon in week 4. Man, the pricing, I guess the puzzle that we have each and every week to work through is always something that's pretty fun. So I didn't think we'd see Cooper Kupp as the number 1 wide receiver, maybe ever. So that's definitely surprising. All right, so I want to end on a little bit more of a macro strategy type of discussion here, Davis, because I think that I used to personally be someone that almost every single week would be totally fine punting off wide receiver in order to get to some of these elite running backs. But man, like punting wide receiver just feels kind of dead at this point. Like these KJ Osborne, Quentin Cephas type of players just really haven't been getting there for us lately. So curious your thoughts on these cheap wide receivers that just keep failing on us recently.
Yeah, I think that you are sacrificing too much ceiling now to get away with it. Now for lineup, for like roster construction purposes, I think one of them a lot of the time is still going to be good. So like Mahomes with one of Robinson, Pringle, or Hardman, Kyler with one. I guess AJ Green and Christian Kirk at this point, they're not even really priced like punts. Brady with in this game, Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson. I don't think either one of them did anything, but I think they were defensible. But I think that the wide receivers on average are scoring so many more points than the running backs. Like, I mean, it feels like every week we're getting, okay, Cooper Kupp for 35 and Godwin for 29. And like, there'll be, 8 wide receivers who score more than 25 FanDuel points or whatever. And At running back, it's more like 3 guys will get there, right? Like Madison had the huge game yesterday. What was the biggest running back game yesterday? I don't even.
I'll have to look at it.
Kareem Hunt had a really big game, I think.
Najee.
But like Najee.
The 19 targets.
That's not gonna happen again.
Yeah.
That's not gonna happen again. So Najee, I think, got 30 or whatever without a touchdown, I believe, which is like, again, just very, very anomalous type stuff. And the reason why I brought this up was I had a really good team yesterday with Mahomes and Kelsey, but when I was using all that salary, that required me to play 2 cheap wide receivers. I played Hardman and Zacchaeus, who both scored touchdowns. They like both beat their projections by like way more than you'd expect. And my team was like total dust, like just because I didn't have Cooper Kupp. Mike Williams got 40 yesterday. Like, right. I think that on with how many wide receivers are just like going ballistic on a given week, I think that you are giving up too much playing your KJ Osbornes, your Zacchaeus, where even if they score, they're really not doing it for you.
Yeah, like you said, like the Zacchaeus play, like what is his true ceiling anyways, right? So you're giving up like so much by like sacrificing just to go down there to get up to some of these running backs. So I'm with you, man. I mean, you've been around longer than I have in DFS, right? I remember talking about this with Sean Newsham even a couple of years ago when all of these running backs basically were so underpriced, but he was still never someone that would just pay completely down at wide receiver because you're giving up like these mid-range wide receiver plays are sometimes the most underpriced guys on the entire slate, and you're basically deferring that if you pay down for some of these guys that may get legitimately 3 to 4 targets, or they're one of those slot receivers that just isn't going to have enough ceiling to get you there anyways. So I'm curious your thoughts on like how has this like evolved over the years? Is this something that like it felt like the running backs were too cheap for a while, these ones that were just getting so much passing game usage, but now we've come to the point now where these elite wide receivers in today's NFL are actually a little bit undervalued as well? Or how do you think through like I guess what it used to be like and what it is now?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's just completely different from the way that DFS used to function, because the guys that Sean were referring to was I want to say it was the 2016 season, maybe the 2017 season. I can go check on it real quick, but David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell just got like 25 points every week, and they would like never do worse than that. Yeah, it was the team jam it in, which by the way, we were talking on the Gilcast last night. I'm pretty sure we invented that. I'm pretty sure team jam them in was invented on the Gilcast, because that was one of the first years where we did it. And we would literally just play David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell every week. And that was, again, kind of in the infancy of DFS, and the sites didn't really understand that they needed to like more dynamically adjust the price ranges. So like DJ and Le'Veon Bell would be like 8,600 every week, and it wouldn't even be that hard to play both of them. And Eric Decker would be like 4,700 every single week, and you just play him, and you'd punt off your tight end, and like that would just be all you would need to do to have a good team. And now, I mean, McCaffrey is that guy, but that's it. I mean, like Derrick Henry has these big wide ranges of outcome, a little bit less. I mean, he has 12 receptions, which is already 7 off of his career high. So that kind of changes the type of player he is. He got 22 yesterday without a touchdown. Like that's pretty good. But, Kamara, pretty sensitive to game script. He was awful in week 2. That never would have happened to David Johnson or Le'Veon back in the day. Like we just don't really have these stud running backs anymore. It's like Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey. Zeke is pretty dusty. Joe Mixon is not going to get the workload. Like all the best players in fantasy are wide receivers and tight ends now with Kelsey. I mean, really just Kelsey.
Yeah, man. It's to the point now where if you're just waiting, like last year we lost Saquon and CMC like very early in the season. So it was kind of like a full year of like that strategy just isn't really going to work to pay all the way down for these wide receivers. I would rather, if I really had to, just completely punt it off with tight end, either just like get one of these dusty guys that I can correlate in one of my stacks and tournaments, or just pay all the way up for Kelsey. I hate living in the middle of tight end, but wide receiver seems to be almost like the opposite in some ways, right? Like the middle range and the high end of wide receiver is just so valuable for your roster spot, just for an opportunity cost perspective. And I don't feel like I had that same thought even last year when I was trying to, I guess, adapt to not having CMC and Saquon. And then those years before, we're talking about the David Johnsons and Le'Veon Bells. Those are easier times, Davis, when you just jam those guys in and then figure it out from there. So it's a lot different.